Submit all fan stories too. Written by Micah. Read by Drew Grimm. Submit all fan stories too. The radio pulsed its familiar yellow glow. Edgar found stories of dark avengers and mysterious narrators his only source of solace, his only home. But now, the radio was asking him to supply such a story. Edgar couldn't believe his ears. Finally, someone would literally listen to him. He raced back to his room. He knew he had to begin right away. No time like the present, Reggie cackled. Damn it, go away, Edgar hissed back. Edgar knew that, like any good writer should aspire to do, his words conveyed more than one meaning, and he needed Reggie to stop hissing in his ears. But if Edgar's words were seen, read, broadcast, Reggie's voice would be silenced, perhaps for good. Edgar remembered the first time he heard Reggie's voice. The publishing firm sent him a letter rejecting his work, unless he could pay them $100 up front. He didn't have $100. Years later, he still didn't. The letter drifted to the floor. Its folds created almost wings, like a mocking raisin. It floated back and forth downward like a pendulum. Poor Edgar, hissed the voice in Edgar's ear. Double meanings Edgar couldn't help thinking, as his eyes darted back and forth, attempting to discover the source of the voice. But Edgar could rarely see Reggie. It would only be out of the corner of his eye, the way you might see a faint star in the distant night sky, the way some of those old-timey spiritualists claimed you could see a ghost. Star or ghost, once you trained your eye upon the source, it vanished. Reggie was just like that. What Edgar could see haunted his thoughts, and soon his nightmares. Reggie was something big, very big. A giant. Edgar knew it was big because of the way Reggie's silhouette cast a shadow on the wall. Reggie had needlepoint red eyes that seemed to glow in the dark. And from his mouth, he had sharp, glittering white teeth that dripped black, ink black. With every rejection, with every overdue bill notice, with every warning from the bank, with every loved one who turned away from Edgar and left after every piece of bad news, Edgar could hear Reggie giggling. Reggie's form, witnessed out of the corner of Edgar's eye, would shake with every laugh. Edgar raced down the hall as the image of Reggie kept appearing in every open doorway. Breathless, Edgar reached his bedroom. He flung the door open and slammed it behind him. He rolled the paper into the typewriter. He sat down into his chair so quickly that he almost fell backward. He hovered his fingers over the keys. But nothing came. Ideas, good or bad, they just aren't coming, are they? I said, shut up, Edgar shouted. The knocking began again, at his bedroom door, as it often did. He ignored it, as he always did. He began to type. The words poured out of him, through his fingertips, into the clack-clack-clacking of each key, into the ink hammered onto the page with every stroke. He told the story of a frustrated writer, a writer who waited in his room, day after day, for success to knock on his door. There was always knocking, but it was rarely ever success. Not good enough, Edgar. This one is. I told you. Shut up. Edgar began to hit the typewriter again. As the black words on the white pages continued to multiply, Edgar couldn't help but notice Reggie again out of the corner of his eye. He knew better than to directly focus on Reggie. It would break his momentum, and Reggie would just disappear anyway. But he couldn't help observe that Reggie was growing without ever getting a really good look. Edgar assumed that Reggie was 7 feet tall. While that may have been true, it wasn't now. With each heaving breath, which seemed to coincide with each finished page, Reggie's misshapen body, in fact, Reggie's entire being was somehow expanding. And so were the details. Gray skin. Edgar knew Reggie was grotesque. The eyes, once pinpoints of ruby red light, became 2 swirling red stars. And now, everything on Reggie, eyes, nails, his mouth, they were all dripping ink black. "Leave me alone," Edgar growled through his teeth, as his fingers continued to dance upon the keys in a frenzy. He snatched each page out of the typewriter and tossed it to the floor. Out of the corner of his other eye, he watched each ink-splattered page drift to the floor, floating back and forth like a pendulum. "Not good enough, Edgar." "I heard you the first time, Reggie," Edgar replied, his fingers still typing maniacally. Reggie's massive form was now taking up almost the entire room. No longer out of the corner of Edgar's eye, Reggie was hunched in front of him. His massive humpback was scraping against the ceiling. His arms were outstretched. His nails were getting longer, sharper. His black, dripping mouth was open and closing. It was spilling over the keys. A drop of ink black dripped onto the return key, just missing Edgar's little right finger. It sizzled. "Too late. You're too late, Reggie. I finished," Edgar cried, as he snatched the final sheet of paper he had just finished. The familiar, satisfying rip of that now empty typewriter shot through the air. Reggie started laughing, louder and louder. Edgar fought the urge to cover his ears. Instead, he jumped from his chair and collected the sheets of paper on the floor. He snapped the edges against the desk, making sure each page was straight. Edgar proudly held the finished manuscript towards Reggie, with an involuntary cry of triumph. "I did it, Reggie. I did it. Fuck you." Edgar looked around the tiny room. The laughing had ceased. Reggie was gone. Edgar began breathing normally again. He thumbed through his typed pages. Good enough, Edgar thought with a smile. Good enough. They'll love this. This time, there was no rejection letter. Just time passing. Day after day, like blank pages flipping in front of his eyes. Edgar stood in his room, day after day, staring at the blank wall. He could barely breathe. Edgar's heart began to beat so loudly that surely his neighbors would hear it. "No," Edgar whispered. "Not again. Not another rejection." Reggie was there now, standing in front of him, staring directly into Edgar's watery eyes. He leaned closer, smiling. Edgar could smell his rotting breath. Reggie extended his massive arms upward and started howling with laughter, ink black spilling from his mouth. Edgar screamed. This time, the orderlies didn't knock. They broke the door open. The staff at the Baltimore Mental Hospital had learned some things during Edgar's stay. First, they picked up the smashed typewriter after Edgar had thrown it to the floor, and despite his protests, they refused to give him a replacement. They learned not to give him paper, as the edges might cut his forearms. But the chair was a new escalation. Edgar swung it and grated it upon the floorboards. "Leave me alone!" Edgar screamed. The staff, growing in number, pulled the chair from his grasp, removed it from his chamber, and sedated him. It forced him back into his bed. His eyes became two swirling red stars. "Leave me alone," Edgar whispered. Edgar sat in his chair, another rejection letter drifting to the floor, its folds creating almost wings like a mocking raven. It floated back and forth, downward like a pendulum. Suddenly, his laptop lit up. A notification awaited him. He opened it. A new podcast was producing horror stories. Edgar listened with fascination. It was the story of a frustrated writer, a writer who waited in his room, day after day, for success to knock on his door. There was always knocking, but it was rarely ever success. When he was finished listening, he scrolled through their webpage. Edgar couldn't believe his eyes. Below the image of a giant gray-skinned monster hunched over a typewriter appeared the notice: "Submit all fan stories too." Frantically, he opened up Microsoft Word. Finally, someone would literally listen to him. "Not going to be good enough, Edgar," the voice hissed. "This one will be," Edgar shouted. "Leave me alone, Reggie. Leave me alone. I can do this. I can do this." The knocking began again on Edgar's door.